I don't usually share stuff like this online, but something happened to me last year that I still can't get over. My name is Hina, and this story happened in Dallas, in a Walmart I used to visit several times a week. This wasn't some rural haunted place. It was a regular supercenter, well lit, fully staffed, normal. Until that one night. It was late November. I remember the exact date, November 28th, because it was my cousin's birthday, and I was picking up some snacks and decorations before heading to her place. I got to the store around 8:15 p.m. Everything felt normal. Families shopping, Christmas music playing softly over the speakers. But right when I entered the frozen food section, everything shifted. At first, I thought it was just a drop in temperature. It is the frozen aisle after all. But no, this was something deeper, a pressure in my chest, a sense that I was being watched, but not in a human way. It was like something old, hollow, and still had its focus on me. I walked past aisle 7, and out of nowhere I saw someone standing dead still in the middle of aisle 8. He didn't move. He didn't blink. Just stood there. He was tall, maybe 6'3" or so, wearing an old-style Walmart uniform, the kind they wore in the 90s. Pale blue shirt, faded name tag, white apron. But his clothes were filthy and burned in spots, like he'd been caught in a fire. His skin was deathly pale, and his eyes were, or rather, what should have been his eyes, were just black, empty sockets. He tilted his head at me slowly and said something in this dry, croaky whisper. "He's still inside. Don't wake him." I stood there frozen. I wanted to scream, to back away, but I couldn't. Something about his presence held me in place, like my feet were cemented to the floor. Then he turned slowly and walked toward the end of the aisle. But instead of turning the corner, he vanished, like smoke. I gasped for air, realizing I'd been holding my breath. I stumbled backward and went straight to find a staff member. I told one of the employees, a young guy stocking shelves, what I'd seen. He looked confused but came with me anyway. I dragged him back to aisle 8, but there was no one there. Of course, but we did find something. Right in the middle of the aisle was a puddle of dark red liquid. It looked like blood, thick, half-dried, and it smelled faintly metallic. And right next to it, a small, folded piece of paper, a receipt, curled and yellowing with age. I picked it up. The date on it? March 5th, 1993. And the name on the receipt was Carl R. The employee I was with turned pale. He stammered something and backed away. "Carl," he whispered, "you sure that's the name?" I nodded, my heart racing. He said, "There was this old story the night staff sometimes talk about. A guy named Carl who worked graveyard shift back in the 90s. He disappeared or died. Nobody knows the full story. But they say he was working in this very aisle, aisle 8, when someone stabbed him during a robbery. He crawled into the freezer trying to escape, but no one found him till morning." I laughed nervously. "You're kidding, right?" He just shook his head. "We don't stock freezers in pairs anymore because of it." The next thing I know, a supervisor comes up and asks if there's a problem. The staff guy whispers something to her, and she gives me a fake smile and asks me to leave the aisle. I left Walmart with chills crawling all over my body. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing whispering. "He's still inside," over and over in my head. At 3:03 a.m., my bedroom light flickered, and the exact same Walmart receipt I had seen earlier that night was sitting on my nightstand. I didn't bring it home. I never touched it after I dropped it in the aisle. And yet there it was. March 5th, 1993. Carl R. Over the next few weeks, weird things kept happening. Every time I visited Walmart, different locations even, the aisle 8 sign would flicker when I passed it. Once I swear I saw Carl's figure in the freezer reflection, standing behind me, even though no one else was there. I asked around in local forums. I even contacted a former Walmart manager who had worked in the 90s. He said Carl did die, and not just that, they never found the guy who killed him. Some say Carl's spirit still roams aisle 8, reliving his last shift. and warning people not to disturb whatever's still locked in that freezer. What does that mean? Don't wake him. Who is him? Why was Carl warning me? What's inside that freezer? I have no answers, but I do know this. I haven't stepped foot in that store since, and I've never used a Walmart freezer section again. Because when you look into the frosted glass of aisle 8's last door, sometimes, just for a second, you'll see someone looking back, and his eyes are hollow. I used to work night shifts at a Walmart supercenter in Indiana. Not rural, but not quite urban either. Just one of those quiet 24-hour stores where you start recognizing every night owl customer and every creak of the floor. I liked it honestly, peaceful, simple. But this happened during my last week working there, and to this day I don't know what I saw or where I went. It was a Thursday night around 2:40 a.m. I just finished restocking the sports aisle and wandered into the clothing section. My back was killing me, so I leaned against the wall and looked over at the fitting rooms. Now let me explain something first. Our store had exactly 3 fitting stalls. I knew this because they were numbered 1, 2, and 3, and I cleaned them during downtime. But that night, I noticed a 4th door. It was off to the left side in a corner that usually held clearance racks. The light above it was buzzing faintly. The door was half open. I stood there staring at it. I knew it hadn't been there before, so I radioed my coworker, Mike. "Hey, did they install a new fitting room?" He replied instantly, "Nope, still 3. You okay?" I walked closer. The door had no number, just a faint handprint on it, like someone had pushed it open with wet fingers. I knocked gently, no sound. Then I said something dumb. "Hello? Anyone in there?" Silence, so, against better judgment, I slowly opened the door and stepped inside. The moment I entered, everything changed. The lighting inside the room was off, too dim. There was a mirror, but it wasn't showing my reflection correctly. It was slightly delayed, like it was buffering. My head would turn, and the mirror followed a second later. I blinked. My reflection didn't. Then the overhead light flickered violently, and the door slammed shut behind me. I rushed to open it, but it wouldn't move. I yanked the handle again and again. Nothing. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection was smiling. And not a normal smile. A wide, unnatural grin, stretching far beyond the cheeks. Its eyes slowly turned black. It raised its hand, but mine was still by my side. It was moving on its own. Then it stepped closer to the mirror, face twitching. The lights went off completely. I started banging on the walls, screaming. Suddenly, total silence. And then, I was outside. I was on the employee parking lot floor, in the freezing cold. It was 5:17 a.m. I had lost almost 3 hours. When I got inside, the manager said I'd never return from break. My radio was still clipped to my belt, but the last voice memo was me breathing heavily, saying over and over, "I'm still inside." Here's the thing. When I checked the fitting room area later that day, the 4th door wasn't there, just the same 3 stalls. Mike looked at me like I was insane, said I'd been stressed, maybe dreaming. But when I got home that night, I found something in my pocket, a tiny shard of glass, cold to the touch, mirror glass. And when I looked in my bathroom mirror, I swear for just a second, I saw myself smiling again, that wide, unnatural grin. It's been 6 months. I moved cities, changed jobs, avoid mirrors. But sometimes, I catch my reflection doing things a second too late, or worse, things I'm not doing at all.